We were talking off air. They were saying, oh, these microphones are on. Got to be careful what we say. I thought that was an interesting observation, and I wanted to spin off on that for a moment. Well, the reason is the internet. And of course, we're seeing this situation now in politics where people have been in politic in their comments, in their observations. And I'm wondering, are we lacking if you will, a filter? The term filter meaning being thoughtful in our conversation and using expressions and terms that we might have come back at us. Sally, you were pointing at something a moment ago.
Well, I was just going to say that especially in politics, I was just writing something about this today for one of my college applications. Just how I think it's so interesting, the language that's used in, especially like we've got an election coming up, like
right.
The language that we're being seen, like the way that these candidates are talking to each other, the way that they're talking to other
actually
political figures.
By each other, not really at each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just in general, like just not language that you would expect a professional to be using. And I think it's so interesting I'm sure like my peers can attest to this, but we were barely, sentient when Obama was president. So
right.
we kind of came to know politics in some of the messiest elections in a very long time. So this is almost like it's normal to us. It's weird, because it's not normal politics. It's just what we're used to. It's the only thing that we've been shown.
I'm going to disagree with you on one aspect of it. Unfortunately, it's becoming normal politics. Okay, right out of the gate. But at the same time, I think you're right. It isn't normal, and this is not how we can. Well, hey. You all have been fairly pleasant in here. That's mainly because I'm here, I guess. I'm the adult in the room, right? But no, what does this say for the trend? Charlie, I'm going to go to you on that one. In other words, you're seeing this play out among individuals who are theoretically seeking your vote, trying to influence you and give you a sense of confidence in them, or for that matter, respect. What? This is an important question. And you, Sally, good point. You're the ones who are the ultimate, going to be carrying the burden of this in the years ahead, if you think about it. Mm-hmm. So what is this really, what impact does this have, I'm going to say, on your generation?
Well, certainly it's going to have a future impact, like in terms of politics. Because I feel like I really don't care for these modern day politics of the very like aggressive, very very mean spirited versions of it, and it just makes me lose a lot of respect for the candidates that are being very like, okay, this candidate's bad because this candidate's bad because of that. But back a few years ago, the candidates were a lot more respectful, and it just seems like it might have an effect because like right now it seems like a lot of the time it's like two children just kind of like throwing insults at one another. Like, yeah, you're not good at this. Well, you're not good at that.
All right. So, but the other aspect of this is actually the language being used. And does it give you license to be like them?
I don't think politicians are meant to be role models. I don't think that's the issue.
Whoa. Yeah, but you know what? I would disagree.
Ella, I actually was going to agree with Sally. Although it is, I think it should be their duty to be role models because they're in the public eye 24/7. The end goal of their game is to win votes, and I don't want to say manipulate because that has a like negative connotation, but convince people to vote for them and to like them. And you're going to do that any way possible, like any way that helps your campaign. So I don't think we should really be modeling our behaviors over people who maybe lie a little bit to get ahead. Which is fine because that's what the job calls for. But I think it's important, like as a voter and especially as a young person, to understand that is what's happening.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Francis, you're sitting there thinking. I can see it. The smoke was coming out of your ears.
I definitely agree with a lot of what Ella said. I think, it's unfortunate because these are the people who are leading us, but you can't exactly look towards them as a model of like ideal behavior all the time.
But here's the other aspect of this. If you're too thoughtful in your approach, Charlie, then how do you differentiate yourself from the other candidates? Because one of the things that you're trying to do is make sure that you see the other candidate, I'm going to use an automobile, as a Ford, and I'm a Mercedes, which I think, good comparison. But anyhow, to all you Ford lovers out there, I'm just being funny. All right. So my point is, how do I distinguish? I've got to distinguish myself, short of extinguishing myself. I've got to distinguish myself so that you will remember my name when it comes time to casting that ballot. So it seems to me I've got to be aggressive. Ella?
I was just going to say that if I were a modern day politician, I would actually try and play the middle ground more and try to swing more of the independent or moderate voters.
Oh, that's important. Yep.
Because, and not only because it applies to the larger majority of people, but we've seen in the past couple of elections, especially with Donald Trump, he has, and even with Kamala and Joe Biden, they have tried to pull so far left and right to try and appeal to that very specific group of people that I think if you were more moderate, you would stand out.
I was actually going to say something similar to what Ella was saying with like the most recent elections and with like the language used and exactly what they're trying to do, you know, some standout factor. I honestly think that all of those things together are promoting extremism on both sides. And I think that for us, that's kind of scary because it's setting a precedent that we're going to have to deal with. Like you were saying, like we're the future, we're the generation of future leaders. So this is not how I want to, you know, I don't want to be an adult and still be, you know, the president is my same age and is, you know, 10 times more ridiculous or something.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie?
I like Sally was saying, it's just going to get to a point where we're going to get so extreme that like we're just going to, like the two sides are going to absolutely hate each other. I mean, because the right is just getting just keep going further and further and further because the left also keeps going further and further and vice versa. I mean, they just keep going. The further they go, the further it drives the other, and it's just a constant cycle of just trying to outdo the other in terms of what exactly they want.
Well, the thing about politics, which is interesting to me, which is something that I feel like my dad has told me and also maybe AP government teachers, but the pendulum is always going to swing. So right now we're you know, you can admit that we're kind of in a very partisan time period, kind of erring on the side of extremism, but it's always going to swing back. So kind of like Ella was saying, we're all so sick of this aggressiveness and this, you know, division. So if you wanted to be successful, maybe, I mean, and theoretically, if you wanted to be successful, you could just appeal to moderate voters because at this point, we're sick of this. So we're going to want to go to the complete opposite direction. It's more tame, you know?
Yeah, I was just going to say, people are just going to the voters are going to become super apathetic, I feel like, and eventually once that happens, and then it'll swing back, like Sally said.
But no,
I forgot what I was going to say. If I'm being honest, I had something good locked and loaded, but
no, Ella, I applaud your comment about apathy, because one of the problems that we have, and I'm going to say this goes at the local level all the way up to the federal level, and that is we go to the concept of, we go to the polls and we vote for the candidate. Then we just forget about the candidate. We forget about the platform. We forget about the issues until they hit our pocketbook or our activities in some fashion. We're denied an opportunity, or they promote an opportunity that we're not really in favor of, something of that nature. But generally speaking, and that's a form of apathy. I cast my ballot, and I'm not worried anymore. I don't, as President Reagan used to say, trust but verify. I trust that you're going to do this as a candidate, but I'm going to verify you're going to do it after you get elected, after you get into a position. Go ahead, Ella.
I kind of remembered what I was going to say, and it ties into what you were saying. With this like heavy partisanship, it creates this like indestructible gridlock, especially in like Congress and stuff, so we can't get decisions made, and of course that makes the people mad. So when they go to verify to see if their candidates' policy plans are being carried out, it's not, because we're so far left and we're so far right that we can't work together. And the government's always going to be slow. Like, it's a democracy. It's not going to be fast. But this just makes it feel like it's impossible to get things done.
You agree with that, Charlie?
Yeah. It's a matter of the whole two-party system thing. It's like if you're in the middle at this point, like if you're not getting selected by the Democrats or the Republicans and you're in the middle by yourself, you're most likely not going to win the election because you don't have any backing, nothing.
Right.
And it makes it that much harder since we're at the very high part of the pendulum in this
Yeah.
term, the very extreme parts. If you're in the middle as of right now, before it starts swinging back, you're not going to be backed by any sort of large party.
All right. I'm going to stick with this for a few more moments before we go to the break. And this goes to the topic, and it actually begins where we left off a few minutes ago on the issue of promotions, communications, impact, conversations. Here you were getting information, guys, on all the colleges, constantly bombarding you. Let's talk here for a moment about the political scene. Are they doing the same thing to? Oh, Francis woke up here, Francis.
I
Let me
would
see
like
it.
to say that I am freshly able to vote, and ever since a couple of weeks ago, my text messages and my emails have been filled with nothing but election-related. Yes, it's been so much.
Okay, so you are now 18.
Yes.
All right. Go ahead, Charlie. Wow.
Yeah. My brother's been talking about something similar to this. He's already been 18 for a while now, but he's in college now, and he's talked about how sick of it that he's getting. When he even when he's just walking on campus, there's people on campus like, "Hey, vote for Kamala." Wait, I don't want to.
Kamala Harris.
Okay, I don't want to mispronounce it.
Oh, don't worry.
Vote for
No,
Kamala.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot at the second. I was unsure. But vote for Kamala. Vote for Trump, and it's just a constant barrage of vote for who.
You are not endorsing any of the candidates. You can use their names. Don't worry about that. I think the important story here is, okay, you are getting those. You're getting flooded. Ella.
I was just gonna say, I think that modern day advertisements for politicians have gotten so insane. And I saw, again, I'm not endorsing one or the other. I'm just pointing out a sign I saw. It just said Trump safety, Kamala crime.
Yes.
And I'm worried that 10 years time it's just going to have a smiley face. Like with the
Like
party
a hand gesture.
yeah, with the party's color behind it. Like that's not giving us any sort of no context. There's no mess. Trump safety, Kamala crime.
Trump
What
good,
win?
Kamala
What do you
bad.
mean? What do you mean?
I'm going to say something that's going to be very critical. Unfortunately, not of you. And it is that unfortunately appeals to a lot of voters.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's simple.
I mean,
to assume.
Okay.
I know the three of us took the AP Gov class that Sally mentioned. Have you taken it, Charlie?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not yet.
Well, the three of us took it with the same teacher, and that was one of the things that we talked about, where it was just like people just see the name or see the party, and immediately they're like, "Oh, that's who I want to vote for," and
Exactly.
they don't look into policy.
Go ahead, Sally.
I was just going to say, tying back to, this is so random, but this is like exactly the conversation that when I sat in on a journalism class at UNC this weekend, it was this exact, literally, like they were pulling up this election's advertising and analyzing it and seeing how like truthful it was and how like if it passed, I think it was like the terrors test, and just analyzing that. But it was really interesting, the advertising that they showed and just how much they were attacking each other. And like the extremism that we were just talking about was so apparent in the advertisements. Like I know Trump's attacked like LGBTQ issues and stuff like that because his
He's opposed to it.
right,
Yep.
right. And then I think Kamala's attacked like, gosh, I don't even remember like.
But the point of the matter is, and I go back to your term a few moments ago, Ella, the lack of context.
Yeah, that was the exact point that they were making. They were asking if that was moral to be able to be just like take little snippets like that.
Yeah, moral, I don't know if it's the right term, but it unfortunately sets a pattern. And I think, and as we go to the break, I think that's important here because somewhere in there we've got to break this pattern. And maybe, just maybe, it's you that will break it. Let's go back to the topic very quickly of the issue of filters and boundaries when it comes to conversations. And we're talking about that in relationship to the issue of the the whole problem with politics. What are the boundaries? What are the boundaries? Are there any boundaries?
Sorry, that was not.
Yeah, we've just got like a contagious like
I just
laughing
got a
going
case of
on
the
here.
giggle, as my mother would say.
Yeah.
As of right now, there are no boundaries. Like, no one is setting. Not that I don't think that there should be, because of course I think that there should be, but as soon as what was it? It was the FEC. It was the Federal or something Commission that like does something for campaigns, like gives them money.
Federal Election Commission.
Elections Commission. Yeah,
FEC.
they had a case a couple years ago where it said that basically major corporations could use money to support candidates since they couldn't like physically speak.
Right.
And I think ever since then, we've just been expanding and expanding and expanding the borders of what is okay for advertisement and election campaigning. And I have yet to see where the limit is because we just keep pushing it.
You're thinking.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about that
Because
one.
you want to get into marketing. Well,
No.
Well, you want to get into journalism, right?
Yeah, I don't want to get into marketing.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No, just journalism.
Oh, a serious journalist.
Oh, yes.
Now
very.
you've got me worried.
Oh.
All right.
That's why I'm interested in these kinds of things, because I feel like with the journalism that I'm seeing today, it's like every news source that, I used to think was like a credible news source is taking some sort of stance or like supports some sort of bias. So it's like you don't really know the truthfulness of the information that you're getting, which I think is so true. Everybody knows that at this point, like you really have to be skeptical.
That's an interesting observation. How do you distinguish the fluff from the reality? How do you distinguish integrity, authenticity from just lies? How do you do that?
I think it depends on the source, honestly.
Do you all check the source?
Yes.
I also think that, again, like I said, we all took a class
Yeah.
about it, and not Charlie though.
Yeah. Boo.
Jeez, Charlie, catch up. No, and there are. So we like studied which websites are more left-leaning, which ones are more right-leaning, which ones are more like in the center. And there's also like a diagram or a chart that you can look at to see which or where your news source lands.
But wait a second. So much of our information now is social media, which is
Yeah.
basically a reference that was sent to you that you in turn refer to someone else, and it just flows uphill, downhill, however you want to describe it.
I also think that that's the bite-sized advertising that we were talking about earlier with the Trump safety Kamala crime sign. You're not getting the full story, and sure you could repost something or whatever. You're like, yes, I love whatever National Hot Dog Day.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, but there is National Hot Dog Day.
Something like that. Like you can repost that on your Instagram story or whatever. But I also think that people who are skeptical or who do look into stuff like this, like I assume most of us in this room we take it with a grain of salt. It's like, oh, it's social media. It's not very serious.
Right. And also, I think.
Really?
Yes, I think.
At least us.
Do you wait? The vast majority of your ilk, your kind, does in fact, I think, gloms on to social media.
I don't think in terms of politics, in terms of things that are actually like that matter more. I don't think that people really look at a social media post or like a TikTok or an Instagram reel or anything and listen to what they're telling you instead of like actually looking at a source. Because if you're having a conversation with someone like the conversation that we're having right now, and someone tries to bring up a point and you say, okay, well, where's your source? And they say TikTok, you're not going to take that person seriously.
Wait. You four may not, but I venture to say the vast... Go ahead, Francis. Let me hear it.
I was going to say, I think...
Get a little closer to that.
I think a lot of people our age, like, they're not necessarily having the conversations where it's like, this is my information from this source, and this source. It's like because self-admittedly, a lot of what I see is like on social media, and I
Right.
have to go out of my way to like confirm.
Do you do that?
I try to if it's something that's like really
Charlie?
relevant.
Do you go out of your way to
I mean, if I think it's important
get a little
enough,
closer there?
if I think it's important enough, so I will go out of my way and be like, okay, I'll go look at whatever this if it's something like really shocking, I'm like, oh my goodness, this candidate did this. Oh, I'm gonna go double check that because I'm like, I don't want to use false information.
Forget politics. I'm talking about news in general. A case in point.
Well,
Go ahead,
I was going
Ella.
to say I actually kind of take back my previous statement because even if that's not me, that's not the type of social media user I am. I was talking to one of the girls I work with in my charity organization, and she was like, she said something like she heard that Hurricane Helene that devastated
Right,
Western
right.
North Carolina was created by the government.
Exactly.
And I looked at her and I was flabbergasted, and she was like, "What?" And I was like, "Wait, you really believe that? Like they would kill people?"
Well, not only that, they would
Also,
just
how do they make that?
A rain machine, she said. I don't. But I mean, that's the point here. Is like that can be dangerous because there are people who don't see the issue in that.
It makes me think of the whole. You've heard the story about the War of Worlds thing, where people freaked out because they were telling a story over the radio.
Oh, the War of Worlds. Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm thinking of here. Like people are gonna be like, "Oh my goodness, I heard this totally shocking thing," and then they don't go to double check it, and then something could happen. I mean, taking media without checking it first, if it's something really outlandish, can be really dangerous to a lot of people.
I also think that, like, for me, and again, like Ella said, there are the people that, just kind of take everything they see and, like, run with it. But I think it's so easy. Like, it's really not that difficult to just, if you're whatever, if you're on your phone, you're just going on social media and you see something that's of interest to you, to just Google it and not necessarily check the source of where that person got it, but do your own research and see, what publications are writing about it.
I'll give you credit on that, Sally. I'll give every one of you credit on that. But I would venture to say that the vast majority of your generation don't think like you.
I can probably say that's kind of true, actually.
So what we need to do is we need to, like, jump scare or, like, kidnap someone
we
from
start an
school.
oligarchy
Actually,
and a religion. If
I'm
it's
gonna
an
start
oligarchy.
making promotional
okay,
signs.
wait a second.
Take over the entire country.
Well, we're going to take a break on that. When we come back, here's the question I'm going to ask you: what is the solution? And one of the solutions right now is to establish you've heard this term, star chamber, a committee, an organization that will determine the accuracy of the information before it ever goes online. I want to hear your thoughts on that. So here's the issue. And of course, the topic of how do you assure that the information is going out on the internet, social media, which, by the way, has no controlling device. There are no editors. And I'll talk to you about that, Sally. I think that's one of the great failures in the field of communications, particularly journalism. They got rid of the gatekeepers, the editors. The editors would sit there and look at a written story and then say, no good. And somebody was challenging the author of that story, the creator of that story, which doesn't happen anymore. It just automatically goes up. And it's interesting. I'm going to tell a story on my industry. I'm looking at stories from noted publications, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, New York Times. They have typos in them. Never would have made print if they had a typo in them. They have typos in them, missing words, things of this nature. We're talking what I would call the blue chip of the journalism field. So we don't have any filters, and we're not seeing it in social media. So here's the experience. So to your point earlier, Ella, I think it was you who brought up the topic of the man-made weather conditions, which, by the way, China is working on that, seeding clouds to create the rain and so forth. But it's still, we got a long way to go. All right. But here's the kicker. So we've got folks who are claiming to be a militia in Western North Carolina, and they are far-right militia. Everybody, once you hear the word militia, you're supposed to run. But they're saying, we're going to go out and we're going to shoot FEMA agents. We're going to stop them. Yeah, and
Wait.
Yes,
What is
yes.
FEMA?
When did this happen?
this happened this past weekend.
What is FEMA?
FEMA, all right, Federal Emergency Management Administration, and their job.
Like people helping with like
That,
the
yeah,
disasters.
exactly.
They're going to
yes.
shoot them?
What?
Yes. And here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. So I do this. I put this random note out on the internet, on social media. Okay? I am a random loose cannon just rolling around, banging against the walls in my studio here. And believe it or not, federal officials got serious. Oh, this guy's dangerous. Well, crazy, yeah, but I don't think dangerous. We're not sure about that. But here's the question. So what they did was they pulled all the FEMA agents out of Western North Carolina, well, certain regions of Western North Carolina. They were in the process of aiding the victims of the hurricane, all because of social media. So, Ella, you've got people out there. You've got the federal government that is responding to these things. What to do?
So you mentioned before we took a break, you were like, well, who's going to control what goes on social
Yes.
media then?
Yep.
And now that's always a very touchy subject because America, land of the free, right? No
First
sort of-
Amendment, so forth. Yep.
Right. And I think that if that were to happen, it can't be the national government who does that. First of all, because it could potentially lean one way or the other, and that could get messy. So if you're going to have it, it would have to be something like with the bank system, where you have a completely neutral organization, or supposedly neutral, even like the SCOTUS, like supposedly neutral, to try and control those things. But honestly, I think people would be like, socialism, communism, even though that's not the definition of those. But
But no, you
Yeah.
centralized control.
yeah.
So I go back to, what do we do? How do we? And I'm very proud of what you all were saying earlier about the whole issue of politics, because as I said earlier, you were talking about the pendulum, Sally. This may be where the pendulum starts to swing back to a more neutral position. But in the meantime, got a lot of crazy people out there, and you've got a lot of crazy people who believe the crazy people.
See, that's my thing. Is like I think the extremism and everything that we're seeing, it's the politicians that are, they're putting it out there, but we're allowing it, like we, at the end of the day, we are a country that it's our job to hold our government accountable. Like that's the
Other
whole
people
point.
accountable too.
Right. So the fact that we are kind of allowing this to happen, I think like the fire's coming from inside the house. Like you can complain however much you want to about the government, but at the same time,
We're responsible for making sure that they're doing their jobs.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we're condoning this kind of behavior.
I was also going to say that if we want to keep the same freedoms we have now with social media and even like journalism and stuff like that, and we don't want to put like governmental control and filters on that, then we have to like fundamentally change something about the way we're educating people about stuff like this. And that's
music to my ears.
I mean, that's a big ask. That is a huge ask. But I'm sure, because I'm one of them, there are people who are willing to put in the work for that. Because I think that's how we better our country. Like, that's how we get everybody smarter, to put in a not smart way.
Yeah.
That's how you keep the pendulum swinging.
Exactly. Education.